Hey y'all, here we are. I am going to do a little bit of potting today, a little more potting. You can see the things I potted yesterday. I have here 2 identical pots, and they still have the remnants from some of last year's tomatoes. So I'm going to dump these out and pitch them over into the habitat, and then I'm going to start fresh with some potting mix. So what I did was I went to Lowe's. I'm not sponsored. And I got a couple of these tomato plants. So what I found are these celebrity varieties that are supposed to be just all around good, tasty, big, round, red tomatoes. We have 2 other tomato plants that I'm doing an experiment with, right? One in a bag, one in a pot to see how they do. And then these 2, I'm gonna plant them in identical pots in identical soil. But with one of them, I'm going to add a little bit of this. This is biochar. This is charcoal that's specifically heated and is apparently just a wonder in the garden. I've watched a number of videos about people incorporating biochar and using it. I've never really used it before, but I'm going to give it a shot. It says that this 1-pound bag is good for 10 plants. It says you can use it either in your garden soil or in a container. So I'm going to do a little experiment here. I'm going to give one of these biochar, and the other, we're just going to give it the regular fertilizer. And then we'll see how they do. Something I meant to mention in the last video was about these tomato plants, right? So last year I just bought tomato plants because I went on how they looked or the kind of tomato they were going to grow. And what I ended up getting was a number of really good tomato plants, but they were humongous. They were way out of hand. 10 feet tall, truly 10 feet tall. I bought a plant this big and it was just grown over my head throughout the summer. Those types of tomato plants are called indeterminate. And that means that they will just grow and grow and grow and grow, and it's up to the grower to kind of either make space for their want to wander or trim them back pretty aggressively. And if you do prune them properly, you should be able to keep them at whatever height you please in order to be able to harvest your tomatoes without having to crawl all over the place. Like I said, I want to hit them with a little bit of lime in the soil, just a little bit, to make sure that we don't get any blossom end rot. But I'm excited to see how these 2 compare. Most of the tomatoes I had last year were indeterminate, so most of the tomatoes I'm going with this year are going to be the determinate varieties. These are sort of, a cross hybrid situation. There are so many kinds of tomatoes you can get now, and I'm not worried about trying to grow tomatoes from seed or anything. We had such good luck in some of these containers. Both of these containers had heirloom and non-heirloom variety tomatoes in them last year, and they both ended up really, really good. So I'm hoping the containers will do great, and I'm hoping we can find a little bit of difference in terms of biochar and how it affects the plant's activity. Okay. Nag champa. Gotta love it. Standard. So back here you can see I've got some cabbages, and then I've got a couple of what are these called? These are called thrift. We're going to plant some thrift in this bed here, and it's going to want to grow and creep and wander. And then I'm going to take these cabbages and we're going to plant them up in the box planters, hoping to get some good cabbages this year. But anyway, right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm going to split up this biochar into, I just need 1/10 of a pound. So I'll use my handy dandy digital scale. What do I use this for, huh? Anybody? Baking. I use it for baking. You really want to use proper measurements, and you want to measure by weight when you bake, not by volume. So anyway, gonna get this going. Here we go.
Did you give it away? Did you give it away for free? Don't you give it away? Let's try to keep it in our family. I know you know desolation, coming home with your pockets full of sand. I know it's no vacation. Oh, now you're plowing your tiny patch of land.
All right, so both of our tomato plants have been potted. Now, since both of these pots look so similar, I mean, truly, This one, the lighter pot, got the biochar, but I'm not sure if I'm going to remember that. She said, Carrie, later on, how are you going to be able to tell the difference? Huh? And I say, I kept one of those little things that comes with it, put a little duct tape on it, and wrote biochar. I'm going to stick that right in here, and boink, and it will live there for the rest of the season. That way we will know which one of these has the biochar. I'm really hoping to see some good growth. As you can see, or maybe hear, the wind is kind of picking up. So when you start getting tomato plants, you notice they have these little shoots that are supposed to hold up all these leaves. This guy yesterday that I had potted was starting to blow over. So I just came in here with a little bamboo stick and just let them rest up against it. Eventually, as they get taller, we'll put them in cages. We'll put them in some sort of device that'll let their arms kind of move outward and pull them up. That's literally what they do. I forgot to mention that last year, these pots that I'm using, they ended up being, so just as when you pull a tomato out of one of these, the root ball is holding all that soil intact. That was basically what was going on in each of these as entire containers. There were tomato roots that basically went all the way down, wound around, had become just this big gnarly knotted ball. It's incredible what these plants do, and we shouldn't underestimate their power. So I'm excited for these because they probably cost me something like $5 a piece, and I'm hoping to get maybe 4 or 5 times that back in terms of how many tomatoes we can yield and get. I also added just a little bit of the lime to prevent that blossom end rot, and we're gonna see what happens with these. Next, we're gonna plant some cabbages in our box planters. All right, something kind of neat, something I forgot. And maybe we'll try this year with the tomatoes that we put into our garden beds. When you buy these little guys, right? When you buy these with a tomato growing out of it, pretend there's not junk in here, but when there's a little tomato growing out of it like that, and you pull it out, that tomato root is so strong and so already made into this sort of vine that what I've heard you can do is pick off these branches and basically lay almost the entire plant sideways in the ground and just let the little tip of it poke out of the ground, and that all of this other stuff will turn into strong root system. Maybe we'll give that a shot this year. I think that might be worth trying out, especially because it's looking like our beds are a little softer than last year and a little looser and full of good nutrients. We may even end up using some of this biochar in the garden, which could be really exciting. So yeah, it's really cool. Now my tomatoes and peppers did pretty well last year, but that's because they were growing over the septic tank. If you don't know what that means, I guess look it up. But this year I think we're going to try them in a different location, and of course, as always, we'll have them in containers as well. All right, check these guys out. Some cabbages. These are called, it says blues cabbage. I don't know, bought it at the local nursery. We planted some of these in our beds in the fall last year, and even though they didn't like make a head of cabbage, we still ended up just getting bags and bags of cabbage, seriously. What's so interesting is that these yesterday were sitting out on the front porch, and they got a hard afternoon sun, and I think their roots kind of dried up, so they started really wilting and sagging and looking sad. So I pulled off some of the leaves that looked somewhat yellowed and sort of like this, and I threw all that stuff off, and I gave them a little water from the top and from the bottom. The roots want to drink from here. You can't drink from your belly button very well either, as in you want to use your mouth, you know. But look at the way they perked right back up. Really, really cool how this happens. And no smell, but it's all I can do to not just bite off a leaf. So anyway, if you look behind me, I've got a box planter here. And I built this box planter last summer from a video I saw on YouTube, a DIY, $19, just $19 to build this thing. And there are 2 behind you, which you can't see right now. But then, of course, I came in and I made a couple of little hoops because we were getting squirrels and dogs. This is sort of the doggy playpen. But the squirrels and dogs were jumping in there and digging around. I didn't like that. So do you want to see inside the box planter? Yeah? Have you ever seen them inside a box planter? Really? Okay, well, check it out. Amazing. You can see we had some leftover lettuce and stuff, some little guys that are kind of scragglers from last year. We were trying to grow lettuce and other things from seed in here. But then I heard that you can basically just throw potatoes that are starting to grow eyes into a pot of dirt and they'll just start to grow. So I'm giving it a shot. We'll see if these potatoes can continue on. But actually you can see right here, this little guy is the start of a little potato plant. And he's got a little sort of friend over here as well. Now these are very stiff, rigid plants compared to these tender little lettuces that we're trying to make their way in here. But what I'm gonna do is right here, I'm gonna put in the 2 cabbages, and then we'll bring the netting back over it, and it should get some good afternoon sun. I'm not sure if it'll get enough to really grow full-ass cabbages, but we'll see. It doesn't take a whole lot, and at some point in the year, we'll just harvest it and take a bite. I'm sure it will be delicious. So I figured, since I got the biochar, you know, just a word about this, about what's going on here. Apparently this stuff is just a miracle worker for the garden, and especially if you're trying to yield flowers, fruits, vegetables, grains, these kinds of things. The reason this works so well in people's gardens and helps things grow is because it really complexifies the soil. It creates a sort of crystalline structure that's multi-storied, sort of like a labyrinth of sorts. And on all of those surfaces can grow the bacteria, fungi, just all kinds of stuff that is what you want going on in your soil. So it's sort of like, it's hard to describe. It's like taking a surface area and folding it into a million different little tiny hallways or something, and being able to have a surface area of like a football field in a bag like this. And if you do that, then you're bringing a great deal of complexity to the soil, and apparently it's supposed to keep giving year after year, which is something I'm totally into. So I figured I'll just do a couple of shakes of this in the box planter. We'll put a little bit over our potatoes. They say you can either sort of mix it with water and spray it on that way. On the bag it says just apply to soil and then water. So I think easy incorporation, I'm all about it. Might as well do it since we got it. You may have noticed in an improvisational fashion, I basically just made these hoops out of old pipes that we had sitting around, and I cut up a piece of PVC pipe and hammered it into the ground. And then I used a little bit of this netting that we used last year to keep the deer out of the garden that we had left over, and I just kind of tied it into a knot, sort of hairnet style, and that way I can just lift it up and off whenever I need to do the work, and then I lay it back over whenever I need it to protect. And it goes around pretty well on all sides. Nothing has been getting into the beds, these box planters, since I've been doing it, so I hope it really helps. You can see in these other box planters, we've got little tiny kales that are coming in. I really hope these do come in. It's kind of hard to grow from seed, so we'll see if I can get some yield out of that. And then also we have over here, oh, take a look, more potatoes. And actually another straggler lettuce just keeps wanting to live, It's amazing. We also have here some carrots. It looks like this guy is maybe not gonna last any longer. That was hardly a carrot at all. But we're just experimenting here, right? And actually, I mean, that is fully edible. From the root to the shoot to the leaf, that whole thing. You could just carrot greens. Flavorful, bitter, but they're good. It's so nice to be able to pull food out of the ground and be able to eat it. I want to do that. And one day I hope to be able to show you just a big old basket full of fruits and vegetables and delicious things. I'm not sure if that'll happen here, but I'm telling you, someday. So here are our buddies. They look pretty snug. I don't know if I really should have planted them that close together, but I've got potatoes at this line. So we'll see. I'm hoping that they want to grow up and try and catch some of that afternoon sun. We'll see. I may want to come in later and trim some of these leaves off just because they're getting a little wide. And then of course I can eat them, which will be nice. But you gotta remember, when you're taking, these guys have lived in a greenhouse their whole life, most of them. And they've lived in these little pots. They lived in one place their whole life. And what we're doing is yanking them out, and we're squeezing all their little funny parts, the most tender, sensitive parts that they have. And then we're putting them in a new home. So at this point, all the care you can give these plants. And really that care should start from yourself and extend to the plants, your barking chihuahuas, your family, the earth, your neighbors, the world, right? There's something that gardening teaches us in this. It's patience, it's care, it's tenderness. It's being able to adapt to change and yet also be gentle and encouraging and nurturing. That's what we're after.